Welcome to VC TV, the Venture Capital TV from LATOKEN. So we have another episode with another set of speakers with a new topic as well. As always, we have separate different topics every day in the week. So today's topic is about investments in supply chain, logistics, and transportations. And to share the insights, today we have speakers from India, Pune, Delhi, and Dubai. So welcome all. So before we start the show, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Tani Mohanty. I'm the Regional Director of LATOKEN, and I'm based here in Singapore. Welcome everyone. So I would like to now pass the floor to each of the speakers. We have 3 speakers today, which is very good as well. And please start with a short intro about yourself, the company you represent, and what you do in the space. I would like to start with the new speaker of the session, Rohit Goyal, who just joined us for the first time. Hi, Rohit. How are you?
Hi, Swani. I'm doing fine. Hope everybody is having a fantastic evening, morning for the other side of the world, whatever. Doing good, staying safe. So I'm Rohit Goyal, everyone. I'm a managing partner at Windrose Capital. We are a seed to Series A fund based out of Pune. So Windrose Capital is an entrepreneur-led VC firm. We are very India-focused, and we believe that we are here to enable India's fast transforming economy by taking some thesis-driven positions in early-stage companies. So that's, so to say, a quick introduction of our business. And yeah, supply chain, logistics, and transportation is one of our focus sectors, as in we believe India as a geography is very vast and complex, and there is a lot of scope of optimization on the logistics and transportation part. So yeah, so we do see a great opportunities coming up ahead.
Great. Thank you, Rohit. Just a special mention I would like to say, just maybe when you're speaking, have your speaker close to your mouth so that we can hear you more clearer.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Yeah, no issues. It's my job to let you know. Thank you, Rohit, for that short intro. Welcome to VCTV. So now I would like to move to Said Murad. Hi, Said. Welcome to VCTV. How are you doing?
Hi, Sani. Pleasure. Thank you so much for having us and for hosting us on here today. Hi, everyone. As Rohit said, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm Said Murad. I'm the operating partner of Global Ventures. I mainly look after our portfolio management value creation efforts here at the firm. Global Ventures is an international VC firm with a presence in the UAE, Egypt, Saudi, and the US. We are a growth stage VC fund, mainly investing in the Middle East and Africa region across typically Series A and B. That's sort of our sweet spot. And we're within sector agnostic to date.
Excellent. I like that. Sector agnostic. Does that mean you also invest into blockchain?
I'm sure we can look at it. Blockchain-enabled businesses. It depends on the different sectors and different businesses.
Okay, sorry. It's okay. We'll discuss more. Thank you, Said, and welcome to VC.
Of course, sure.
Last but not least, she doesn't need any introduction, but just in case some people missed the session yesterday and the past sessions, I'd like to introduce our regular speaker, Natasha Berry. Hi, Natasha. Welcome back. I think you are as much as like me, who likes to come on VCTV every day.
Yeah, always a pleasure to be a part of your webinars and give the India insights. So today, I think there are a couple of other speakers as well who would talk about India with me. So that's interesting, and look forward to an engaging discussion on that front. Yeah, so I am the co-founder and managing partner of Venture Gurukul Capability Fund. It's a SEBI-registered Category 1 fund focused on early stage investments in India. As we are early stage, we are sector agnostic. However, we're looking at ventures which are digitally transforming the day-to-day transactions of consumers and businesses through the tech landscape, maybe SaaS or any consumer internet businesses. And we look at investing in companies at pre-Series A or Series A round once we feel that there is some sort of a product market fit, which we can assess for that particular venture, and they're ideally raising the money to scale. So we call ourselves a capability fund because one of our expertise which we bring to the entrepreneurs is adding capability to their team and to their organization structure. So typically, we help them scale with the insights of our super experienced venture partners who come with the operational excellence experience of more than 30 years of leading large corporates all across the world. So they come with complete hands-on operational support to our portfolio ventures and really help them give the strategic insights and right sort of operational insights on how do you scale sensibly and wisely and without affecting the unit economics, right? And maintaining the eye on the prize, which is the cash, and how you're conserving the same and effectively utilizing the same. So that's us, and we are while we're focused on India, but we're looking at businesses which are ripe for digital disruption across the world. So we look at even expanding Asian businesses into MENA and other markets, primarily MENA. So that's one of our focus areas as well. And thankfully, this webinar is focused on India, MENA region, and that will be interesting to talk about.
Wow, good to know that you are expanding into the MENA region.
Yeah,
awesome. Fantastic.
Stage ventures, yeah.
Okay, awesome, fantastic. Thanks for adding that on, Natasha, and welcome again to VCTV. So, okay, speakers, now and the viewers, we are all set. Also, our speakers have been introduced. Now it's a time to go and ask some questions and take some insights from them, what's happening in the space. I'd like to go with Rohit first. Hi, Rohit.
Hey, hi.
Hey, supply chain. When it comes to supply chain and pandemic and the coronavirus, I mean, they are inseparable. Like, you know, that's the only, that's the space has been disrupted. I mean, because of social distancing and physical distancing, you know, it's one of the industries after travel and tourism. So tell us what's the current trends, challenges, investments that you have made in the space coming from your company and, you know, the regions that you invest into. Thank you.
Lovely. It's been a very interesting space, very honestly, given with these on and off restrictions coming into play. And, you know, there's a lot of chaos initially because everybody was just trying to scramble and figure out the way to get things through. Fortunately enough, it was made quite clear and government was quite supportive on the front of if it is essential goods, it has to be given some sort of a green channel of sorts to open transportation, etc. This created a disruption in a lot of businesses, but a disruption for one is like the opportunity for the other, right? So fortunately enough, actually, a couple of our portfolio companies got the better out of this. So for example, one of our portfolio companies called Bidano. They are into this last mile supply chain for pharmaceutical. So between the distributors and the retailers. Now, this was a very unorganized space. And as you can imagine, like distributors were dependent on very few, like, you know, a couple of employees to actually deliver their entire load. With pandemic hitting in, a lot of these blue collar laborers were hit because, you know, the areas that they were staying in went into containment zone or were locked down. So they were not allowed to travel in and out. And suddenly what happened is when it was the right time for pharmaceutical businesses to actually make a lot of money, they were not able to do so just because they were not able to fulfill the delivery part of it. As a matter of fact, what ended up happening is this issue was faced by a lot of people. Our company directly approached the association of the region where they are operating, and they actually got a blanket mandate wherein the association approved that every distributor will move on to this tech-enabled platform. Simply the benefit at our side was scale. So even we had disruptions in our own supply chain, but then just because of the scale of the workforce there, it was manageable, right? Because if you had two field executives, if one of them does not turn up, you lost 50% capacity. But if you had 100, and if 20 of them don't turn up, you're still good to go, right? Because you're still kind of at an 80% capacity of sorts. So that was an interesting piece, as in coincidentally, during lockdown, this company ended up meeting their March 21 targets already. So while it was a problem for one space, we could very clearly identify it as being an opportunity for a completely different space. One more of our portfolio companies, which is actually into robotics. So they initiated by developing robotics for the whole logistics and warehouse operations. This entity is called Inventor Robotics, but I think their product is quite more popular. There's this humanoid robot called Mitra. it sort of welcomed Narendra Modi and Ivanka Trump during the Global Electronics Summit in 2017. Very recently, actually, it was along with all the audience this time around for our Independence Day speech, along with the Prime Minister, so on and so forth in that body, right? So it's sort of become the flag bearer robot of India, so to say. This company quickly saw the need that, a robot which is well conversant, which has natural language processing and skills to understand speech and sort of process it further, could be used as a first line of defense for medical workers. Now, India, being a country with a huge population, we have very low density of medical staff. So for us, it is all the more important to keep them safe and sound. And so hence these robots were then deployed as a first line of defense. So any new patient basically coming in interacts with the robots first, and the robot classifies them whether high risk or low risk, and then moves them to the respective doctor. So a lot of opportunities, a lot of disruption, but a great, I'd say like a good time to be in. It's like exciting times.
Okay. Oh wow, it's very exciting with the robots like moving all around, and I can just visualize that, and I can see it's like really fascinating. Thank you, Rohit, for sharing that. Next, we move to Said. Hi, Said. Can you please tell us what's happening in the space, and the recent investments that you've just made in the space? Thank you.
Sure. So the investments that we made into either businesses that sort of are adjacent to supply chain, which is an e-commerce business, and we also invested in transportation business in Egypt. Those were done pre-COVID, to be fair. So I'll just talk a little bit about those and then talk about sort of how things have shifted and changed. We invested in an e-commerce business called Mum's World, which is basically a vertical e-commerce business focused on everything mother, baby, and child. Mainly operational in the UAE and Saudi Arabia and deliver across the entire region. The main impact for e-commerce was a major boost in terms of demand, but the catch up was really on how you ensure security of your supply. So it's that trick of being able to match that supply against the demand that you're receiving. All of a sudden, everyone sort of shifted from going and shopping in malls and offline to a fully online experience. Here in Dubai, actually, we had sort of a 24-hour lockdown for weeks on end. And so everyone still needed to sort of gain access to certain things. And as you may imagine, for mothers looking for products for their babies and their children, some things were quite critical. So they would immediately rely on partners like Mom's World to fulfill that. And so the onus was on businesses like Mom's World to really secure their supply chain, ensure that they're able to boost their ability to secure more product and deliver in a timely manner to everyone. We didn't have lockdowns on delivery partners and so on, as those were considered and deemed to be critical for business continuity and for sort of life continuity, quite frankly. Everyone shifted, as I said, to online capabilities. And so the governments here were quite quick to act in enabling a fully versatile structure that enabled all these delivery partners and last mile partners to continue to operate. We were quite fortunate in that sense. The other business that we had invested in was a transportation business in Egypt called Basit, which basically provides shared bus services, mainly targeting businesses right now in Egypt. So with the challenges of public transport in markets like Egypt, there's room for players like Basit to come in and really disrupt that market, leveraging technology, leveraging their ability to consolidate and really bring in strong supply chain again, even from a transportation perspective, consolidate that into one platform and offer it to different businesses, therefore ensuring sort of continuity in terms of businesses having reliability on having their people in on time and in a reliable fashion. The disruption that happened there was a sort of a shift to work from home. But the flip side was certain critical sectors immediately needed to ramp up their capability to bring people in. Basit quickly sort of adapted their buses to be COVID friendly. They've got sort of separators between the different seats. They've got different sized buses and vehicles that are able to transport different people. And so they were immediately able to I don't want to say pivot, but adapt able to service their clients' needs and ensure continuity on that side. And sorry, I didn't get that. Sorry,
No,
Sunny,
sorry.
were you saying something?
No. Sorry, please carry on.
So that was sort of the short and quick version of what's happening there. On the e-commerce side, I'd like to say, the biggest sort of challenge, as I was mentioning earlier, was security of supply chain and how you make sure that you're able to bring that in to the country. With disruptions to travel, disruptions to cargo, and so on, people started to look to alternatives. There's an understanding that there's a little bit of importance to have a local supply chain available to you in case of border closures and so on. People started to look more closely towards that. And again, you start to look at the diversification of your supplier base, make sure that there's no concentration towards one or the other in case there was a disruption, but perhaps a case, someone testing positive at one of your suppliers. You want to make sure that you don't get completely shut down. So you need to have that diversification built in to mitigate your risk.
So was all these investments done in the last 3 to 6 months after the pandemic?
No, those were pre-pandemic, to be fair, in those sectors. What we've invested in sort of through the pandemic, I would say,
right.
And it would be for a different session, but we've invested in health tech businesses, fintech businesses, and others.
Okay, and what stage were these these startups? Like, what is it like? You mentioned like Series A and pre-Series B, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, our investment in Mom's World was in Series B, and our investment in Basit was pre-Series A.
Oh, excellent. Now, both were done through the pandemic.
No, prior to the pandemic.
Prior to the pandemic, but you are still doing investments in other sectors through the pandemic.
We are, yes. Excellent.
Good to know that. That's what I wanted to hear from you. Thank you, Syed, for giving a very, sort of elaborate explanation of your investments in the space. Thank you. I'll come back to you with more questions. Next, I'd like to go and ask Natasha to share her recent investments trends in India from an India perspective. And I know, as always, I'll be like very much, I'd be like surprised about the way the companies that she invests into, something very much touches my heart at least. Sorry, I was losing words. How losing words?
Okay, I'll try to live up to that. Too many people. Anywho, no, so I think it's a very interesting topic given the current situation which we are going through with the pandemic, where it's completely throttled the existing supply chain mechanism, and the reliance which we have, which we can't ignore on China for not just us, but any country in the world, it sort of gets highlighted even further. And the need for, especially from a geopolitical standpoint, to move these supply chains mechanisms, right? These global supply chain mechanisms from China back to your local country, right? So the entire concept of globalization has gone to the back door, and now it's become about nationalization, right? That's become the emphasis in these times. And it's really identified the weaknesses which our current supply chain is facing, right? The need for us to diversify our over-reliance on one particular country and really start building some basic necessities within the country. So if you look at, so to really move the supply chain at a macro level from China to India, if I talk from an India perspective, right, there are a couple of hindrances around this. So the reliance which we have for China for some low-hanging fruits like furniture, clothes, and other things, right, those can be transported or extrapolated back to India, right? But when you talk about some of the high-tech investments or high-tech opportunities in terms of tech, the manufacturing capability around the same, and what I really like about and because we interact quite a bit with the ecosystem in China, is the integration which they have with the supply chains over there, right? You have these huge industrial manufacturing free zones, as I'd like to call it from a MERA perspective. Free zones, right, where your suppliers and your the people who you get your inputs from is integrated with the ports and how you're going to export it, right? That's very beautifully, these blocks fit one after the other. And that's something, the infrastructure is one of the biggest challenges which we face in India. even if you look at the current logistics which we have an over reliance on logistics through road, right? But we have to develop the other aspects when it comes to port, inland ports, and other things, right? So that's something which is a weakness, and we really have to do that heavy infrastructure investment before we talk about the integration of technology around the same, right? So you have to do the basic infrastructure investment to diversify our supply chain from that perspective. And one thing I think which the earlier governments have tried to walk in the right path towards is building these free zones, manufacturing hubs based out of Gujarat and other places. But I think there's been some issue or the other from the land acquisition standpoint for these sort of big free zones, right? Which is integrated where your entire production life cycle from your suppliers to your whoever you're going to export to is completely integrated end to end. Right, so that's one thing we really need to get back to the drawing table and really have to do that heavy infrastructure investment, which is eminent and identifies our weaknesses at times like these. And other thing, when you're talking about even from a manufacturing standpoint, right? Manufacturing 4.0 it's all about integrating tech in the current ecosystem. So how do you integrate? Thankfully, for a country like India, where shortage of labor is not an issue, right? So. But still, there's a lot of opportunity on how you can integrate. There are a lot of companies, especially in India, which are integrating IoT in manufacturing for more seamless manufacturing capability and increasing the operational efficiency, so on and so forth, right? So the integration of this in your manufacturing capability, having your suppliers, your raw material suppliers in the same vicinity as that, and then integrating the same with the port, or if you have to send it to a city, right, to have that right infrastructure in place from a roads perspective, right? So you have to do all this heavy investment, which right now it would become the need of the hour, and I hope the infrastructure story really picks up on that front. Though there's been a lot of noise around the growth which we're seeing in the roads side in India. So more has to be done. So for a developed ecosystem like the UAE, where all the physical infrastructure is done and there's seamlessly integrated tech, there's IoT everywhere, right? So because that's one thing which they integrated with. So because we missed that sort of infrastructure investment, basic infrastructure investment early on. So now whatever investments will come through will be integrating tech as a part of, let's say, your manufacturing or your capability in terms of improving the manufacturing capability, so on and so forth, right? So that's one thing which is there. And I think with this sort of an opportunity where we've seen the over reliance on online shopping has become even more important. How do you effectively utilize your existing fleet to be able to cater to demand? I think during the early days, India had one of the strictest lockdowns in the world. We had a situation where there was a complete glut in the logistic capability to be able to deliver to the customers, right? And a lot of people were receiving their orders very late, or they were just getting canceled because they just couldn't cater to the demand, right? We weren't prepared for this. So that's something which is seeing an on rise, and I think e-commerce is something which is seeing an exponential growth. If you talk from a tech investment opportunity standpoint, what we foresee is that with the onset of rise of more and more e-commerce transactions, a lot of companies especially are moving from offline to online. So there's a huge opportunity for brands to be able to make their own e-commerce gateway, right? Their own standalone e-commerce website, and to be able to provide the same service in terms of customer delivery as they would if they were selling on Amazon, for say, you know. So then so we have one particular company which is a part of our deal pipeline, which we'll be looking at closely from an investment standpoint, which is providing SaaS as a service and PaaS as a service to these sort of standalone brands, may it be, let's say, Ralph Lauren or let's say Calvin Klein, right? To be able to first to build a complete SaaS platform for them to be able to manage their warehouse. So, you know, you effectively manage their warehouse with the sort of SaaS platforms, and how effectively you're churning the inventory around the same. And the second, real-time insights on where their product is and when it is expected to reach to the consumer, all being managed as SaaS as a platform and PaaS as a platform to the enterprises around the same. So that's one particular thing which we're actively exploring at. And Yeah, it seems like an
So,
interesting opportunity.
yeah, thank you, Natasha, for sharing those insights. Natasha touched base on a lot of challenges in terms of infrastructure that India has. I just want to know from Rohit. Rohit, what are your insights? Because Natasha highlighted the challenges. The low hanging fruits, obviously, can be done out of India, but China still is the forerunner. Like is in the forefront. I mean, we've been listening, we've been hearing that people are going to move their manufacturing base out of China and move it back home. But do we have the infrastructure? So is it a lucrative space for an investor like you as compared to medtech or other industries to invest into?
Oh, like actually, it's a very lucrative space to be in. One very great point that Natasha actually brought out, and which is something that way back in 2015, I had actually met a railway minister. Just if you look at Indian railway network, right? It is one of the largest rail networks in the world. We have the infra; it's just underutilized and not optimized. So it needs simple tweaking. China has a lion's share of their transport, internal inland transport, happening via railways. India has like a very low percentage of logistics being happening. We are too dependent on roadways, right? China has like India also has a possibility to develop waterways internal to the country. That also is an option which isn't being explored well. So from an infra perspective, I believe India does have the infra to actually take up and sort of grab this opportunity. It's just that there is a lot of optimization required. There's a lot of tech enablement required. And again, like Natasha, we are also quite gung-ho on SaaS and PaaS companies, which are helping, enable this optimization of infrastructure and, create better utility of capacity that is already there. And we are seeing those things happen. It's now a matter of once, things get back to normal, the government will also have to move quite fast, enact good policies and sort of just make the execution of those policies smooth and running. India is very well prepped to sort of bag this opportunity. I believe infra is there. It just needs to be sort of cleaned up and organized better.
Great. Good to know that. These are all positive news to us. So in terms of the pandemic, has COVID actually helped in accelerating investments into supply chain startups or logistics startups in India?
I believe eventually it would. So largely, just because of the uncertainty level, a lot of VC activity went down during the last 2 quarters. But having said that, as it is picking up, we do see, like we are already seeing certain spaces like healthcare is there, edtech is there, and of course, supply chain and logistics will continue to be a strong part of it.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you, Rohit. Said, I'd like to ask you the same question. So in terms of VC investments, has the pandemic played a role in the frequency of the investments?
I'm not going to say it's impacted the frequency of the investments. I'm going to say it's sort of impacted to a certain extent, the thesis, if you will. So the investments that we did absolutely continue to make were ones which proved to be super resilient even through COVID. We've invested in a business called Helium Health, for example, which is a digital health platform out of West Africa. And their business obviously has sort of picked up and accelerated through everything that's been happening. We invested in a business called Ogram, which is mainly focused on the future of work and effectively powering the gig economy and sort of, a post-COVID world, if you will. And that's sort of the lens that we're trying to take at the moment. It's what does a post-COVID world look like? There is a lot of uncertainty, as mentioned by Rohit. I'd like to say that, it's prudent to maintain sort of a very sharp eye on how the world's going to look post this pandemic. And you can place your dollars in sectors where you believe it's going to sort of continue to accelerate, grow, and develop. I think it's as simple as that. So we have continued to invest. We are continuing to look at different investments across a multitude of sectors. And it's just about the value prop of that business. I think COVID has exposed quite a few sort of gaps as well, glaring gaps in the market. And the quickest entrepreneurs are the ones who are going to react, identify those gaps, and really work hard to plug them, especially those that have a demonstrable market size.
Excellent, excellent. Good, good, good. So we now
I did want to add one more quick thing to what Natasha was saying earlier. You were talking, Natasha, about sort of accelerating operational efficiency from different businesses. I actually completely agree with you on that. We invested in a business called Aero Labs, which has developed a product. It's a productivity software provider, effectively, and their product is mainly geared around increasing operational efficiency of deskless workers, automating certain tasks, workflows, and so on. We've seen that even through COVID, this has been sort of quite an attractive sector. People are turning towards that type of SaaS-based software to really help their businesses scale and grow in an effective and efficient manner.
Right. So Natasha, do you have to say something to what Sai just mentioned, or we are good?
Yeah, no, I'm good with what was discussed earlier.
Okay, great.
I think there are a lot of opportunities, though mainframe logistics hasn't really seen the uptake which it should have seen, especially in times like these where a lot of things are just getting delivered online. But I think we could sort of give Reliance the credit for it. They have successfully launched JioMart, which overnight, within a short duration, has become one of the largest deliveries for fresh food, right? Beating everyone else in the ecosystem, whichever unicorn or even Amazon for that matter of fact. So if you look at it, how were they able to do it? Because they already had that backend infrastructure in place. They had that network in place. They had the supply chains, everything in place. They just had to put the front face from a tech perspective, and boom, they just got the numbers immediately, you know. So yeah, I think you could to some extent say, yeah, okay, fine. Reliance with their operational efficiency and delivery mechanisms have done very well with their JioMart, and they got a lion's share of the investments. They're leading the investments right now in India. In fact, they're the only company which is jacking up our FDI investments, right, for whatever went down because of the pandemic. And there you have Reliance, which makes up a couple of what it was pre-pandemic. So we're looking very good from FDI perspective. And though right now, from a VC perspective, there's been a lot of momentum around edtech and gaming and various other things. Like Rohit rightfully said, we should be seeing some momentum around supply chain and those sort of tech investments. Because as we're seeing an onset of more and more digital transactions happening and people getting very comfortable and seamless towards transacting online, something which would have taken a decade to happen almost in a year. It's been a big enabler from e-commerce perspective. So a lot of investments around, if e-commerce rises, the supply chain has to rise at the same time, right? So you would need a parallel investment around the same, which should kick in shortly. It's a matter of time.
Great. Thank you, Natasha, for those. Rohit, I've got a question for you. So, what have you seen that has emerged during this pandemic in the space? Something new because of something unique that has maybe an example from your portfolio company, startup that you have?
One good thing, Sony, that we've seen is the willingness to change. Transportation and logistics has been a very traditional industry at large. And as Natasha mentioned, we haven't seen the full impact of it yet. But I believe what sort of the pandemic unlocked was this whole jolt to the existing infrastructure and the incumbent players that you need to update yourself and adopt new technologies. And yes, we've started seeing more and more acceptance. We're seeing a lot of these companies either investing in or acquiring smaller tech players or tech providers, just so that now everybody wants to have more data, more information, so that they can act upon decisions, they can act upon correct insights. They can have fast reaction time and a more optimized operations at large. So the biggest change I see is in the mindset as such. Again, from within a portfolio company, I was speaking earlier, there is willingness of trying out or experimenting new things. When I was speaking about, how robots are getting deployed in the healthcare space, and that was something, that had COVID not happened, it would have been a very, very long shot of sort, as in we wouldn't have even been focusing on that as an active sector, very honestly, within the portfolio company.
Exactly. We again thanking COVID for that. I know that already.
No, not really thinking. I'm not glad COVID is there because okay, in
I
parts it
know.
has been good, but largely it has been more disruptive to the economy at large, which is never good for any business working within the economy.
Yeah,
So
but there's always an
yeah,
opportunity in the times of crisis, and we know that.
definitely, as in that's to quote Winston Churchill, right? Never let a good crisis go waste.
Totally.
And opportunities VCs would get the best of it.
Yeah. So thank you, Rohit, for that. Sorry, Said, I'd like to know your perspectives. What's been emerging in this pandemic within your portfolios that you hold in the UAE market that you've seen because of the pandemic? So
Sorry.
you're mute.
So I was saying, there's been a sort of acceleration in terms of digital adoption in general. So I'm not just going to talk about our portfolio, but I'm going to talk about in general. So sectors like healthcare, for example, have experienced, or digital health even specifically, have experienced a large acceleration because people have all of a sudden become open to two things. One, from the supplier side, or in this case, sort of the provider and the doctor side. They're more willing to provide their services on a virtual platform because, frankly, at some point there was no other alternative. And from a patient side, also they were more willing to try these types of platforms. If we're talking about like a digital health telemedicine type platform, even doctor booking, e-pharma, there's been a lot of acceleration across the board. And more recently, we're also seeing sort of the propagation of certain lighter versions of hardware that are coming in as well, which people are looking to try and roll out to supplement and complement everything we're seeing on the software and on the software side that's being created. A lot of innovation, quite frankly. The other areas that have experienced acceleration, I would say fintech, and a few of the fintechs in our portfolio have definitely seen sort of a bit of a pickup in that sense. Online food delivery, online food aggregators, and so on as well. I don't know if you saw the news recently, but in the UAE, for example, there was a business, we're not invested in it, but there was a business called InstaShop that experienced quite a bit of an acceleration. They were acquired by Delivery Hero in a recent transaction. And so there's been quite a bit of activity and a bit of M&A activity that's been happening as a result of that acceleration. InstaShop is basically an online grocery platform. And so that's sort of been interesting to see. And it's sort of, I think for me, the crux of it has been the acceleration in digital adoption across the board. Health tech, fintech, ed tech, you name it. Everyone sort of just up-leveled all of a sudden. So what would have taken us years to be able to achieve, COVID shrunk into months and compressed into months for us.
Absolutely. It's called digital transformation because of COVID-19. I mean, I keep on seeing some kind of post on LinkedIn. What led to the digital transformation in your company? And there's an option called COVID-19. And this, sorry, in a lighter note. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Said. So we are nearly like halfway through the show. I would like to know if you have any questions for your panelists or speakers, because obviously you are in different regions. Natasha and Rohit are in India, but if you have any questions for Said, if you have any questions for both Natasha and Rohit, this is the time for you to just take the floor and engage with each other. Thank you. Any questions?
Hi. Yeah, I'd like to actually bring out one point that Said mentioned, and this is a sort of a follow-on effect that we are seeing with a lot of traditional industries and spaces like logistics and transportation adopting or looking to adopt towards technology. We are also seeing a ripple effect on the whole embedded systems side, right? So your basic IoT, etc., because these guys earlier did not have an infrastructure in place to go digital. So in order to go digital, we are seeing the first item there being how can we add some element of digital technology, like a small IoT device or an embedded system device onto the asset so that they could be, sort of taken to the cloud of sort. So I'd actually like to know both from Syed as well as Natasha, how do they see this particular trend following through, right? Because again, investments in hardware was not, especially in India, was not very active. India has primarily been the manufacturer and the design house, but not really the creation or innovation lead when it came to electronics and soft embedded systems. So what changes are they seeing in the space evolving?
Sure, thanks for that. Essentially, the biggest change, I'll start with us. we're a lot more focused on the software side from our perspective. We like the lower capex, more scalable models, and that's sort of been very commensurate, I guess, with what you typically see in PC. Are we seeing more and more people dabbling into the hardware side and trying to see how they can do it in an effective and efficient manner? I think so. Particularly with sort of the acceleration in terms of people wanting to adopt IoT and so on. So as I mentioned earlier, the business we invested into productivity software, it's called Aero Labs. One of the things that they can do as well is they'll effectively be able to introduce some IoT elements into the different assets that exist in different businesses and so on. And so there's been a little bit of investment happening into that space, but I'd say our continued focus will be on much more on the software side and the more scalable side of business.
Great. Any other questions for anyone in the panel today?
I would just like to add to that, in line with just what Rohit was saying. So I think China even dominates from a design perspective, right? Most of our, if you look at our electronics OEM, it's all very integrated over there. So you have the design hub right over there, and then you have the manufacturing, and then of course you already have Oppo's, Vivo's, Xiaomi's, who the top designs go to. And really, what's really left behind, the scrapes, which these guys don't want, the Chinese conglomerate don't really want. It comes back to other OEMs in developing economies like in Africa, or even let's say India. So what this pandemic has really shaken up is that we can't have this over reliance of even the design being there, and we just picking up those from the design houses over there, because it's so integrated over there, and you're dependent not just on design but even on your manufacturing. So we are seeing a shift in terms of manufacturing happen, where this outsourced manufacturing in China, which as it is, the cost was rising because of labor laws and even environmental laws over there, right? A shift towards Vietnam was more seamless, but I think because of the red tapeism over here in India, that's been kind of slow, but we hope that gets expedited with the current government. So if anyone wants to win in this, and of course the sentiment, like I said earlier, around nationalism is huge, right? So if you say Desh ka phone or Desh ka television, if I paraphrase that in English, that means our country's phone, our country's television, right? So design has to move now in India. And we have the opportunity to hire best of the talents. We already have huge R&D facilities over here in India, but they're not being utilized to innovatively think and shift that design thinking over here to India. So even be able to
Hi, we've lost.
Hire some of the expats from Europe and other places to come to India and really, from a time perspective. Hello?
Yeah, have we lost? So can anybody
hear me?
Yeah. You were a little bit breaking up in the middle.
Okay. No, I was saying there's an opportunity for the design house to move now back to India, and we have the talent, we have the resources, and we have a huge incentive. That's the biggest reason for us to move in-house now.
So is that because you rightly mentioned, because every country want to bring up their talent to a standard where they can rely on that domestic talent because of the COVID-19. But is every country is ready for that? I mean, designers, in India, I mean, obviously they were not exploited.
I think if you talk about India, there's no shortage of talent. Clearly, there's more a brain drain situation than anything else. We definitely have the talent. In fact, if I look at some of the top unicorns, let's just say even in US, they all are Indian origin. A lot of them are Indian origin founders. So you can't. I don't think the talent is an issue. But I think the incentive has been there. And of course, the cost was so favorable from a China perspective. But now it doesn't really matter. Cost doesn't matter. The sentiment matters,
Right,
we have a much more larger incentive now, given the current pandemic and the geopolitical situation, of course.
Yeah. So talking about India, obviously, we have a lot of talent there.
Sorry, sort of drive the point home, right? With a limited participation from India on this panel, you already have one electronics engineer on the panel. So that's the amount of talent. Electronics and technology engineers, we have absolutely So engineers have had to choose other professions like being a VC instead, just because there is talent which is not being met with proper opportunity. So I believe India is very much ripe to sort of benefit out of that. Also, one more good thing is when it comes to electronic systems, like other than if you go to the bare basic component manufacturing, the rest
Yeah.
is not very infra heavy. So it doesn't take a lot to, let's say, move an assembly line of a mobile phone from China to India. It would
Right.
take a lot to move a semiconductor manufacturing plant, but the assembly part of it, the actual manufacturing part of it, is something that can be easily moved from one location to the other. So I think that that's a very low friction and a low hanging fruit out there.
Great. Thank you, Rohit and Natasha, for those insights about India market. Said, I'd like to ask you because Dubai is a very sort of developed nation, sort of as compared to, if we compare from India perspective, and obviously the talents over there, I think I don't know if it's cost effective to move back home or still have manufacturing base outside of the region. So I think you're the best person to enlighten us for that.
Sure. I mean, I don't think that it's sort of a very manufacturing-driven economy here. It's a much more services-based economy, previously heavily reliant on sort of the petrodollars, and then a little bit of a shift into sort of the real estate, financial services side of things, and then sort of more on the services side. Dubai has really turned into, or the UAE in general has turned into a bit of a hub in that sense. So it's a lot more about attracting talent and so on. It's a heavy expat population here as well. I'd say the talent is quite high. It comes at a certain cost, but there is availability of talent in that sense. Whether it's also sort of engineering, development talent, and so on, that definitely exists here. And again, it's getting attracted into the country from different places. I'm not sure if that completely answers your question or not.
So what challenges do you think UAE or Dubai is going to face because of this restrictions, with the nationalism movement that we have in other countries like, India and US, everybody wants to move the manufacturing base close to home. So how?
Well, I think this sort of goes back to the earlier point where I was saying, that there is an element of everyone looking towards securing a local supply chain, whether it's from a food perspective, investments in agri-tech businesses, enabling sort of the different types of quote unquote food security to be kicked in, whether it's on the supply side, on the manufacturing side. As I said, I mean, the UAE is not sort of well known for its manufacturing capabilities, such as a China or India as a market, but the capabilities are definitely being built up. Back to the point where securing a certain element of a local supply chain has become paramount. And it's not about nationalism or sort of, I've heard a lot of discussions going on about sort of people saying, how does this impact globalization and so on. I don't think it's as far as that, but having an element of a localized supply chain is critical to business and critical to continuity. An airport shutdown on the cargo side would have been detrimental to many, many different markets around the world. And that's something that we just could not afford and could not happen.
Yeah. That's true. Okay. Anything else you want to add, Said, or? Okay, cool. We're good.
Nothing specific.
Okay, cool. We just want to know from you, each of you, what are the best practices you follow before you invest into any startup? Rohit, would like to start with you, both from an investor perspective, the best practices, or you probably could also tell us from a startup perspective, what are the best practices you follow? Thank you.
Okay, so I think it's pretty much standard when everybody says these things, right? So you have a proper due diligence, etc. We have multiple rounds of meeting with the founders, but we do it not for the sake of doing it, but we actually dig down thorough through. We have this belief that we like to fight with our founders before we sign a term sheet and not after. So we usually get in touch with them, and the term sheet comes only when there is already an alignment, as in we don't want to see that there is a vision alignment mismatch after the investment has been made, because that just results in friction on the cap table, and nobody wants that. So for us, some of the best practices we are like, I personally am a stickler for processes. So we have a set defined processes for investment, right from the time we first meet a company till the time we've already invested, and even actually post managing that relationship post the investment. And what we do is we actually have a third party process auditor for this particular process as well. So within internal to the organization. So we want to ensure that we tend to sort of negate effects of any sort of a mental bias or a cognitive bias that could have been present in the decision making by putting proper checks and balances in place. So
So
I think
because of
that's yeah.
yeah. Sorry, because of this pandemic and because of the lockdown, so were you able to close any deals, or maybe you looked into a deal pipeline online? I mean, were you very convinced of the fact that this is the new normal of closing deals?
Very honestly, we do have developed a good pipeline. So when the pandemic began, we actually stopped investing for a quarter because we were looking for things to settle down and have better visibility out there. We are looking to close a couple of deals this month, but in interest of transparency, those were founders we'd already met before the lockdown was enforced. But we are developing a healthy enough pipeline for like which is like a purely digital pipeline of sorts. It's
So
just
you,
we believe that over communication is always better than under communication here, so we try communicating more than what we used to before with each of our team members and our founders.
so Rohit, you mentioned that you're looking to invest this month. You're looking to, right?
Oh, so no, what I meant was we already have companies in a pipeline where we would end up closing deals with them this month as well.
Right. Great, great. Are there any particular industry or?
Um, Not in the sense of traditional classification of industry. So in the traditional sense of definition, we are sector agnostic because we are not saying we'll stick to A, B, C, D, E sectors, but we have a different value proposition definition. So any business that is fulfilling that. So one of those is adoption of technology by businesses. So we are looking at closing a transaction in e-commerce services space. There's another transaction that we are looking to close in financial product distribution space. Uh, so from a sector perspective, it's quite diverse.
Diverse. That's good because we have a lot of startups in India in our community, LATOKEN's community, and so I think you would be more than happy to explore them, maybe.
Would love to. As in, we are seeing like a sudden. So since the month of August, we've started seeing a huge uptick in the deal flow, the organic deal flow that we were receiving. One typical point to notice, we are seeing a rise in some sort of embedded system companies, and hence I brought out that point early on. That
Yeah,
we are seeing a shift towards a lot of people going towards that.
great. Thank you, Rohit. Sai, I'd like to know what, as per you, what are the best practices that an investor should follow before they can shortlist or even invest into a startup?
Sure, of course. I mean, I'll just build on what Rohit said because I mean the process isn't going to be materially different across different investment firms, but essentially a very robust investment process that has the right checks and balances built into it is critical. One where time is deployed effectively and efficiently as well for both the investor and for the founders as well that are looking to raise capital. So in our case, for example, we start with a quick initial assessment on the business with a bit of a scoring. We then, we sort of have checklists for each and every stage in which we move through the investment process. We have then sort of an early stage investment committee to sort of approve full-on due diligence, incurring sort of certain resource and costs, and then we have our final investment committee. And all through that, there's sort of different checks and balances that need to be achieved, whether it's on the commercial side, so commercial due diligence, tech due diligence, financial due diligence, legal due diligence, and the works. As long as you're very sort of methodical and clinical and have your processes airtight, then you're going to do what we're meant to be doing, which is mitigating risk.
Great. Are you qualifying any leads online for building up your pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, so as Rohit said, again, yeah, the pipeline's been robust. It's a mix of people who we've known from before, who we've spoken to from before. We're sort of quite active in the ecosystem. We have always been, and there are some who are reaching out to us. We're not necessarily sort of traveling to be able to meet them and so on, or they're not able to travel to come and meet us. And so there is an element of building up that rapport on a digital basis, but building up that rapport and getting comfort is key. At the end of the day, when you're a venture capital investor, a lot of what you do is invest in the right people.
Yeah. So you might know, like after Singapore, Dubai government, I mean, and the startup community is quite pro blockchain technology, because I used to travel to Dubai for attending blockchain conferences before the pandemic. So are you also willing to or explore the startups that we have in our community who are in the blockchain space? Are you looking to explore to see if you're
by all means, as I mentioned earlier, we are sector agnostic. So anything that will sort of fit within the mandate that I mentioned earlier, we're happy to look at.
Excellent. I'll share more details after I've spoken with Natasha. Sure. Thank you, Syed, for that. Natasha, I mean, obviously, Syed and Rohit have said, good points about the best practices. Do you have anything else to add on about the best practices, especially during these times?
Yeah, no, taking ahead with what Rohit just said. So primary thing, because we come in as active investors in terms of managing the portfolio and really providing operational insights from that perspective. So what's really important from our side is that we are in line with the founders in terms of the vision. So how you might go about that vision, we might have an argument around the same, but what you're trying to achieve, what's your vision, what's your mission, right? So that's something which we believe should be in alignment with the founders, and more importantly, with the co-investors we are investing with, right? Because we are typically a co-investment fund, and we look for the same synergies with the people which we are investing with in the venture, right? And what's the sort of comfort which they have with us taking a more active hands-on operational role in terms of managing the portfolio. So these are the two things from where we feel that there should be an alignment in terms of a long-term vision of taking the company to a certain stage, and then it's a win-win for everyone, all the stakeholders. And the second aspect, which is very important from a founder's perspective, best practices is maintain transparency. So it really doesn't matter how you have done or if there's some glitch which happened in the past, but be as transparent with your investor as possible, because don't look at them as an investor, right? They are part of your journey at the end of the day. So you have to work with them, right? And really take your vision to actual reality, right? So they are there in the long term, and be as transparent, because it's really not, it really doesn't set a good impression when something's come up in the due diligence which the investors were not made aware of. So if you maintain transparency, it's okay. It's a relationship driven VC landscape. So maintain that, and be as transparent as possible.
I really like that when you say that we don't look at you as an investor but a partner. Be more transparent. That's very important.
We have a very good relationships. We're very founder centric. We have great relationship with all our founders. They treat us as part of the team because they are very frank with us in a lot of ways. We hope they are. Hopefully they have been.
Sure.
But it's been a very good relationship, and we really don't come with that stick to keep hitting them from time and again. So we maintain that relationship, and yes, it's you have your glitches time and again. It's a growing startup, so you will have that growing pains. So it's fairly understandable.
Thank you, Natasha. I have a request from Rohit, which obviously I think I would definitely like to hear and take. Again, Rohit said that he wants to discuss or share his insights about electric vehicles and the impact on the sector in logistics and transportation. Rohit, please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask other panelists as well, right? So electric vehicle as an industry was sort of picking up before the pandemic. And it's in some parts it's in a bit of a confused state right now, at least from the angle that I am looking at it. And I would love to hear the perspectives of the other panelists as well on how do they see this space evolving, right? Because of two major factors. It's a capex heavy industry, and people are refraining from doing uncertain new experimental capex. And secondly, as far as electric vehicle deployment is concerned, probably 90% or so of all electric buses, more than 90% are in China. There's a super duper heavy dependence on China when it comes to electric vehicles and its adoption. So what are their take on this whole piece? So Syed, Natasha.
Do I go first?
Please go ahead.
So I think from I am quite passionate about energy and resources sector, having studied this extensively. What I feel is that, like you rightfully said, Rohit, there's an infrastructure issue, and we need to look at not electric vehicle by itself, but even the infrastructure around charging, right, which is negligible, is not there yet. And more importantly, I think in one of our earlier panel discussions where we talked about this at length, is the infrastructure around transmission and the distribution mechanism, right? So do we have that? Can our systems really take that in place to be able to add further loads at different points, right? And the second, though, I think there's been a lot of policy initiative from the government side of it to encourage charging infrastructure among merchants and others, where your merchants are being allowed to be able to sell electricity via charging infrastructure. But still, like you mentioned, it's a capex heavy segment. And if you look at batteries, right, a lot of people are saying, oh, let's do away the infrastructure. We can just do battery swapping, but you need to understand battery swapping. Battery is like the main part of electric vehicle, and it's very proprietary to each manufacturer, right? It's you can't just swap one battery with some other manufacturer's battery. So you have to look at all these things, and plus it's the charging and discharging cycle of each battery, right? So number of times you charge and discharge, the same amount of proportion your battery life goes down. So you need to look at all these sort of variables and permutations and combinations are on the same. It's very easy to say we can do battery swapping, but lifting that, making the infrastructure for that, and second, to have a seamless battery operating system across every player in the industry, that's something you need to really look at, which is still a lot of R&D is required. So I think we are some time away from that. And at the end of the day, I think electric vehicle takes off primarily because of subsidies. So I think despite the subsidies, it's still kind of a little bit more on the pricier side for an electric vehicle. But we're seeing a huge upsurge in terms of two-way electric vehicle really picking up. But I think the main challenge will lie around the battery systems, the battery management systems. And as you rightfully said, majority of it comes from the majority of the tech around battery comes from either China or US, right? But India is a tropical climate, so you have to do a lot of customization for that technology for India, and that yet has to be proven, right? So it's still, I think some of the early movers will burn their hands, but if you come in after a point, it'll make a lot of sense. That's my two bits.
Great, thank you, Natasha. Rohit, did that answer your question?
It did. I'd love to know the situation in MENA region from Said as well, in terms of how's the development happening over there.
Sure, there's. I mean, I'll make it brief. I'm conscious that we're over time. We're definitely seeing infrastructures that are being developed and being built out here a little bit more. The government's been sort of heavily involved as well. I think one of the things that I personally would like to see more of is, as infrastructure develops more, the fast charging stations, particularly if we're looking at those that are available in malls and commercial places and so on. There's professional parking for electric vehicles, and there's charging pods definitely available then and there. Just go and swipe your card and connect and start to charge. As those evolve into sort of fast charging pods and so on, it'll become a lot more efficient and effective to be able to own an electric vehicle and run it and manage it comfortably.
Great. Sure. I think it's a more mature market, would say. Let's put it that way.
I think infrastructure is a little bit more developed here in that sense.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a difference. So Rohit, you got two perspectives now.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you guys for both the perspectives.
Okay. Now that we are slightly over time, we're not that much over time. Just want to know from our new speakers' side, what are your closing remarks and feedback about this ECTV?
I really appreciate this. It's a great way to sort of share views, hear different views, different perspectives, and particularly from different regions. I definitely found the session quite insightful, and thank my fellow panelists for their input and their insights today. Excellent.
Thank you so much, Said. Rohit, over to you. What do you think?
I was actually, it's a very fantastic initiative, and I'm surprised as to why didn't we stumble upon this before. Why is it happening now? So this is something which is, I believe, need of the hour, especially with all the education and knowledge sharing going online. And this is a very good replacement to those conferences, etc., that used to happen. And you guys have kept it really topic specific. So that makes that sort of punches a lot of value in a shorter span of time. I think it's a fantastic effort.
Thank you so much, Rohit. We appreciate your feedback and we work on getting better. So Natasha, again, I know you've always been very
You shouldn't be asking me that. I am quite a regular over here.
Yes,
But
so
no,
that's why you
like,
got, yeah.
no, I think what I really like is you always have some new set of speakers every time in this webinar. So it's a great way to network with people all across the globe and reconnect with fellow colleagues with Rohit in the ecosystem yet again. So it's great, and look forward to more such webinars as a way to engage with more people across the globe and hear some interesting insights.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. And I have, so basically by hosting this show, I have learned so much that I can't just tell you how much. So we have these shows Monday to Friday, Rohit and Sai, just for your information. We cover all sort of topics that you can just think of. I mean, obviously you've received an email from my colleague Carol, who is in charge of sending and inviting speakers. So if you're interested to speak on another panel on another topic, please feel to reach out to me or Carol, who would have invited you today, and we'll be more than happy to have you back on our panel. Because the reason is, it's not only networking, but we are learning a lot from each other as well. Like Rohit learned something about electric vehicles because he had a question, and we had insights from Dubai and India as well. So the whole point is not only networking, but also learning and enriching ourselves, because these topics are very specific and very targeted. And we also have startups who are actually watching you and in our community, and they're going to reach out to you because your profiles are now getting featured on our website under www.latoken.com/profiles. You can go and see yourselves. So the startup community that we have is going to be very much benefited by this information, because it actually gives them a summary of your investments and all the details around that. So yeah, so that's I wanted to add before I end the show. Thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to host you again on another panel on another topic. Till then, stay safe and stay connected, and good evening. Thank you.
You too. Thank you, everyone.